Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is just 1 o'clock by my phone, so we will go ahead and dive in. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ken Willey. I am the president and CEO of KOW Building Consultants. We're a New York-based national company providing building and construction inspection services for planning cost reviews, requisition inspections, property condition reports, environmental site assessments, and a full suite of energy sustainability consulting services. We're going to talk to you, or I'm going to talk to you today about something that I think is hopefully a help to a lot of our clients and the viewers. And we'll go ahead and dive right in. And it is a what to look for on site, early warning signs of a troubled project. I've been doing this quite a number of years. When I started, I had a nice head of hair, and now I got snow on the roof and I'm starting to lose it. So it tells me when I look in the mirror that I've been at this for a number of decades. And one of the things that I have put together and noticed as I've gone on my journey is there are very often things to look for as tells. If anyone's a poker player out there, there are tells out there, and it's not always telling you that you have a problem, but it's telling you may have a problem. So what I hope today to do is to provide to you a look into the field work. I'm going to bring the site to you. And my goal is that I'm talking to someone who is either new at a lending institution, construction loan lender, tax credit syndicator, etc., perhaps even new to the industry. And they say, hey, I'm going to be on site next week for one of our projects. What do I need to look for? That's what I'm hoping to show you today. So as I dive into the slides here, the questions that I want to answer are the following. You're about to go to the owner, architect, contractor meeting on site, and that's OAC, owner, architect, contractor. It's typically a monthly meeting. It could be more than once a month. Sometimes projects don't have them. But that is a meeting of the minds on the construction project. And that is where you will do a number of things, including your monthly requisition review. You're going on site. The questions are, what should you look for? What is most important? What tells are there? What matters most? What doesn't matter? Because you need to know, as an old energy consultant, Andy Pading used to be, what's the pig and what's the gnat? I can worry about everything, but where should I focus my attention? What should you ask? I can probably say there's no better training I've done for our newer or younger inspectors. You don't have to have the answers. You do have to have the questions. And when you have the questions, you go down a line of investigative discussion where you get to a point where you say, hold on, based on what we've just uncovered, I need to talk about why I'm concerned about that. You need to have the questions. The further I've gotten in my career, the more I know than when I started, but boy, the more humble I am, because I know there's just so much I don't know. And every day I go in the field, I learn. Every day I talk to folks like you, or employees, or coworkers, or architects, or contractors. I learn something. I learn something all the time. And then most importantly, who is responsible for addressing these issues? And are there early warning signs? That's what we want to accomplish today. Now, of course, I'm broad brushing this. I'm putting every one of your projects into one group. That's really not very fair. But we're using it as a teaching mechanism. It's a tool. So every project is going to be different, yes, but they're going to rhyme. There's going to be similarities. I was out to dinner with a colleague recently, an environmental company owner, and he said, it took me a while to realize why these construction projects are all so hard. And I said, okay, I'm game. Why? Why are they so hard? And he said, every construction project is like a new startup. It's like a new company. And yes, you have similar players, particularly if it's a phased project, but he's not wrong. Every project development is like a new company. It's a new site conditions, new neighbors, perhaps new building department, new design, new codes, new energy requirements, new user, new bank, new developer. So it really doesn't surprise very much that they're very hard to do. It's a very risky industry. And that's one of the reasons, is that every project you're hitting reset. I'm even amazed when we go from phase 1 to 2 to 3, how it's better, but it's still not perfect, that we're reinventing things every time we have to earn that on site. So let's go through my top 10 things to look for, early warning signs. Number one, means and methods. I cannot recommend to you high enough to look at the means and methods as an indicator of how worthy your team is. What does this mean, means and methods? And yes, I like to tell a lot of stories. I could say too many, but I think just the right amount. We had a new employee a few years ago that was hired on our energy side. And he said, I'd like to come out on some of our construction sites to see what we're doing. And I said, that's a terrific idea. So he came out 3 or 4 months in a row to one site. And after he came out the third or fourth time, I said, what do you think? His first comment was, I can't believe how big means and methods are. And I said, yeah, the means and methods are the difference between a lousy or an average super and a rock star. And you're really, really good super. What do means and methods mean? It's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. So I'm going to show you a few pictures and give you a few things to think about regarding means and methods, both good and bad. So we have here a 5-story pre-war New York City building. Great. These are renovated all the time. The good news is we have the structure to use. And a lot of these old buildings, pre-war buildings, this building was probably built in 1925, something like that. Those buildings are structurally built very, very well. In fact, if they were built before the 38 requirement for a certificate of occupancy, they didn't even have inspections because you ordered the building like this out of a pattern book. And you'd order the pattern book. You just got married, you have kids, you have a family. Hey, let's build a house and build a townhouse in Manhattan. You'd order the building out of a pattern book, and that's what they build. These buildings were very well built structurally. So the good news is you have a renovation. You're going to reuse your building envelope. You're going to reuse your structure. The bad news is, how the heck are you going to get these really, really long members into the building to replace your joists? Because you're not walking them up the stairs. And the question is not just, what do I need to build? That's on the plans. I could show you that. The skill is, how am I going to do it? So for an existing building, means and methods is very unique because of physical restraints like walking joists up the stairs. So this is a good photo of means and methods. Someone smart said, hey, let's do this. Let's order all of our joists to be delivered, as long as the loading's okay, and we'll get a boom truck and we'll deliver them through where the windows are going to go. Don't install the windows yet, because we need to consider the means and methods. So this illustrates what I mean. It's not what's going to be done. It's how are we going to do it. Another example is when you're getting your sheetrock installed, you're going to boom that in as well. If you lean it up against the wall, you can't install the sheetrock on that wall. So it should be laid in the middle of the floor, which means the middle of the floor should be broom clean, perhaps some plastic down. These little things, these little details are what a great contractor, a great super knows and sweats. Those little things will not delay the project and allow it to move along. So have you leaned up the sheetrock against the wall, or have you put it in the middle of the floor so we can sheetrock that very wall that you leaned up against? Another good example, you're working down in the cellar. You have to put underground piping. We need to get the dirt out. Well, this is an existing building renovation. Guess what? You're going to have a bucket brigade. You're going to fill spackle buckets and move them out of the building. Have you considered that? You know, on a new construction state, we've had projects where we've had midtown buildings where they have held out installing a part of the building until they got the chiller and the generator dropped down into the basement. Although the generator now wouldn't go in the basement, the new post-Sandy code, it's above grade. But the point is, we need to think about these things much earlier than we need to think about these things. And that's a great super. I can't stress enough how the boots on the ground, great super knows all of this. Okay, you've got your stairs installed. That's terrific. You've got your steel corrugated decking. You haven't poured concrete yet. However, have you gone through and put wood or some other material so it's a safe, non-tripping hazard way to have workers move in and out of the building. Means and methods. Great example of means and methods was during COVID. Fascinating study in means and methods during COVID. What happened? Well, we all know what happened, but I'll give you a couple stories from our vantage point, which I found very interesting. First of all, COVID hit, and it was different in different parts of the country. I will admit that. However, I'd say in New York City, for example, New York City did a very good job of getting installed safety measures and ways we need to think about how can we keep building. One of the things I found very interesting was not just masks and all that. We all knew that. But what was fascinating is that in the matter of a day or two, we started getting a lot of phone calls from our supers. And they were saying, hey, you guys need to do an inspection, right? And I said, yes, a requisition inspection. And they said, you don't need to be here during the day, do you? Meaning you're not working on the building, you're inspecting the building. And I said, okay. They said, can you come early morning, at night, or on weekends? Because I need to control the flow of traffic on my site, and you're not needed during business hours. So we started doing a lot of inspections early in the morning, at night, or on weekends. And it was a good compromise, means and methods. It was a way that the super saw the project moving ahead in a way that was not on paper. It was, how do we get this accomplished, not what are we going to accomplish? The other thing they did, which I found very interesting, is they would segregate parts of the building by trades. So I'd go into there was a couple projects in particular, I remember I'd go in the trailer and they'd have color-coded plumbers on the 4th floor today, sprinkler on the 5th, framing on the 6th. So they would separate the trades to control their traffic. Now, forget where we are now with, what happened with COVID and how it all happened. All that super knew was, I got to get this building done. That's all they knew. And they didn't want stop work orders, and they didn't want the building department showing up or OSHA or whoever having issues. So COVID to me was a really interesting case study in means and methods. And the great supers stepped back and said, okay, how am I going to get this done? I'll finish with the last example on means and methods. And this is one you should ask about when you go on site. Crane picks. Tell me about my rooftop crane picks. You have equipment that goes on your roof. You've got potentially a cooling tower, a chiller, boiler, mechanical equipment, fans, generator, elevator equipment. You have a lot of equipment to go on the roof. If it's too big or heavy and you can't take it apart to send it up the hoist, you need a crane. A great super will tell you the crane's coming on the 18th. We're doing an overnight Saturday night crane pick on the 19th. The crane will be gone by the 20th. Oh, and by the way, I've got this material and this material and this material coming on the 17th that'll be ready to be picked up to the roof. That's a great super. That's a great super, because that means and methods concept is something they know is how you really move the ball down the field. Number 2 thing to look for, what you don't know. Now, this is not what you know. We know what we know. We don't know a lot. And particularly for renovations, we don't know a lot. But always think about, what do we not know yet? What do we not know yet? So, for example, on a renovation project, a nice pre-war building, I like surprises from the standpoint of teaching. I don't like them as much as a consultant. Fireplaces, perfect example. This was a building. This was one of my buildings. We didn't know there was a fireplace. No one knew there was a fireplace. The top of the fireplace was capped and cut at the roof decades ago. We took off all the framing. Guess what? There's a fireplace. The nice thing about fireplaces is they're nice little pieces and you can fix them up and all that. The problem with fireplaces is there's a flue behind that wall where the smoke would go up. So now structurally we need to say, is there a change coming here? So what you don't know, and of course, as you're connecting dots here, your gut rehab, you're not near as worried as you are in your light rehab or your mod rehab, because anything we're keeping is a potential delay, cost, or issue. So what you don't know, until you get those walls, floors, or ceilings opened up, I don't know what we don't know. Now we have guesses. We know what similar buildings have looked like and how they were constructed, but you really don't know for any building what you're going to find. A perfect example is how joists are cut and damaged. Now, this is an old pre-war pre-World War II picture of joists. Well, the picture's recent, but the joists are pre-World War II. The good news is with wood like that, if it's not damaged from notching, fire, or water, it's stronger than wood you'd get today. Because this same joist you'd get today from a lumber house is a 20-year-old farmed tree. That wood you're looking at there was a 100-year-old natural tree, better wood than today. In fact, there's buildings I've been in that have uncovered undamaged wood joists that are 100 plus years old and are as straight as the day they were installed. Great, strong wood. The longer you grow wood, the hardier and stronger it is, which is why Canada gives us a lot of our hardwoods and a lot of our structural wood. We do a really good job in America making wood. Canada is a little better as far as those longer growth woods. So what happens with this? Well, we've got notched joists. We've got dry rot, which is wet wood that then dried. This is an issue. Did we know this going in? Did we see this going in? Was it all covered up? I don't know. But what you don't know is going to become an issue to deal with. Are you allowed? I was doing this seminar once and I had someone ask at the end, were they allowed to notch those joists? Yes. There's kind of rules of thumb, which usually your architect will go along with. Typically speaking, you could notch your joist, the depth of which is the width of your joist. So if that's a 2.5 wide joist, you can go down 2.5. You can go through the middle of it as long as you're in the middle third, cord out usually a circle for like a pipe. So there's some rules of thumb that allow you some liberty with notching, not this much. So what you don't know, ask about joists. And when they say, oh no, good news, we don't expect to replace a lot of joists. If you feel that the hairs on your neck, Michael Lear, an old KOW inspector, is retired, you say, if the hairs stand up on your neck, start asking questions. And that's the biggest thing. Now, I would caution you, where are you going to see your joist issues most often? 3 areas: bathrooms, kitchens, cast iron radiators, because those are your wet areas. Typically speaking, that's where you're going to see your biggest issues. Another one, of course, I could do a whole topic on this, is environmental. Asbestos pipe lagging. That's a big one. Asbestos is at a microscopic level, little hatchets as opposed to spheres. So the good news is they bind together and they're very, very good fire retardant, which is why we use them for many, many years in things including pipe lagging or pipe insulation. But it's the same reason why if you breathe it in, it's a cancer-causing product, because it'll really do damage. So asbestos is an obvious issue. You should never, ever, ever be touching or moving asbestos like this unless you are a licensed, certified person that can do this. There's 2 kinds of asbestos. There's non-friable and friable. Non-friable is, just think of it as liquid or solid form. Friable, what you see here, is airborne. That's your issue. Looking at asbestos is not going to damaging you. Breathing it in is another story. So environmentally, always ask, where are we with environmental? Asbestos testing, lead-based paint testing, mold, PCBs. Where are we with environmental testing? What you don't know will probably be something that's going to hurt if you don't have that full investigation. You can encapsulate asbestos pipe lagging, but that assumes, of course, that you're not changing the pipe within, which is not usually an advantage we have. So ask about environmental issues. You should never have demo going on at the same time as environmental unless they're specifically trained that way and they must operate that way, because your demo sub is separate from your environmental sub. By the letter of the law, your environmental sub finishes their work and it's a quote unquote clean site, and now you can do demo. Unless they're intertwined, then you must do them together. Here's just a kind of a comedy picture. No, I'm sorry, not comedy picture, but just an interesting picture. When they were doing the Freedom Tower excavation in 2010, they discovered a 1773 Revolutionary War era gunboat, which you could sort of see right there. So there's something that they didn't expect to see. And that's what I'm going to end with, what you don't know. If you're doing new construction and you're thinking, Oh, well, Ken, I'm doing new construction. I don't have to worry about any of this lead-based paint or joists. Correct, but you do with earthwork. And earthwork is going to be about 65% of your change orders. Until you get your foundation done, you have surprises that could pop up. Now, I'm guessing most of the time you're not going to find a 1773 Revolutionary War gunboat, but you are going to find previous foundations. You are going to find urban. Sometimes there's like debris, like bricks, etc. Suitable soils. The water table might be higher than you thought. You might hit clay. You might hit rock. There's a lot of things you could hit when you're digging. So the question there is, before we start digging, what investigation have we done? What geotechnical work was done? And do we feel it's adequate to assess the risk properly for what we're about to start? Number 3, what else should you look for? So we were looking for what we don't know. We were looking for means and methods. Workforce. I know how just incredibly obvious this seems. And I know that it sounds like we're getting into the very common sense era of the presentation. You're right. Workforce. Look for workforce. Now, the good news is the great supers have good relationships with their subs. They've lined them up. They pay them well. They take care of them well. They communicate well. They make sure they have a safe workspace. And those subs are coming back tomorrow. They are absolutely coming back tomorrow. So your better supers and your better contractors will always have better subs and better workforce. So when we're looking at workforce, we're talking about what do you have today? What have you had over the last 30 days? And where are you going to peak, or where are we headed? Now, one thing I will tell you with workforce is you need to be a little practical. No, you need to be very practical about this in what's capable or possible for the project. Now, most projects, if you're doing a new build, ground up new construction, they're going to have a workforce graph like this, which is similar to your requisition and your progress graph, which is not an accident. What this represents is the following. If you look at the first third at the left part of that graph, it's a very, very low slope. The reason is when you start your project, you have only a few subs working, excavation, underground plumbing, foundation, which means you don't have that many people working. You're building a foundation. There's only a few people that can be working on that at once. And therefore, you don't have a big workforce. You're not working and completing a lot of work, and your requisitions are going to be lower. Then you get to get your superstructure going on, and now we're in business. Because now, let's say you're building a 20-story building, and you're up to the 6th floor. I'm just making up a number. Your superstructure is continuing, but guess who's coming right behind in your 2nd floor? Your framer. And then your mechanical sub, and your electrical sub, and your fire sprinkler sub. And pretty soon, your insulation, your sheetrock, your tubs, your toilets, fill in the blank, fill in the blank, fill in the blank. That's the middle third. You're cooking. You've got a lot of subs on site. You've got a lot of people on site, which means you're doing a lot of work, and it means you're billing a lot. We like this part of the phase of the project. We're really moving along. So if that first 1/3 of the project show we're finishing 1 to 2% a month, that middle third is showing we're doing 6 to 7%. We're loving it. Now we get toward the end, the last third, and things slow down. And they naturally slow down. We're not concerned about this. They naturally slow down. And the reason is certain subs are done. They're demobilizing. They're off site. Now we're doing tile. Now we're doing paint. Now we're doing trim. You don't have a lot of subs left, which therefore means you don't have a lot of workers left. We don't have a lot of work left to do. And it's finish work, which is more precise and therefore more acute and takes a little longer. So you're going to have a smaller workforce. So the fact that your workforce is going to go from low, medium, high, medium, low is very, very natural. We as professionals know what those numbers should be, but we're not alarmed at first if we go on site and they say, we have 1 sub working right now and it's the excavator. Yeah, that's what you should have. So we look at this and consider these things because your project is going to follow a natural flow. Is this the same with the renovation? Could be. And it could be only because you might have demo, that's your starter, and then you're doing framing, all your rough mechanical, etc., and then you're doing your finishes. But it's not going to be as S-curved as this. It'll be a little more straight lined. We like to see supers, and you should as well, that have great organization. They have toolbox meetings. They have safety meetings. I was at a project a number of years ago, very good New York City affordable housing developer, and I happened to show up early on site, and the super said, I'll be with you in a minute. And he said, hey, come here. I want to show you what we're doing. And they had someone in the beginning at the front of the room doing a 4-hour scaffolding seminar and certification for the workers, and the workers were in 3 groups. The middle group was English. Over to the left, there was someone translating into Spanish, and over on the right, there was someone translating into Chinese. And I went, this is a good way to have a safe site. They literally trained and certified people on site before the workday. That's rare, but that's how you get your workforce all on the same page. If you're doing a big building, you should consider that it's going to resemble a little town, a little structure, a little village when you have 300, 400, 500, 600 workers on site. We had a project a number of years ago, I won't name names, big skyscraper, ground up Manhattan. And I went down into this, there were 3 subcellar grade levels for parking. And I went down at one point and I noticed that what the subs will do is they'll often build shanties, and shanty is like a wood structure that you have a little swinging door, and it's where you could put your bag and your lunch and all that, and you could lock it up. And you go down there, and I noticed that the shanties were set up in such a way that there's almost a hierarchy of trades. And the carpenters, they built the shanties for everyone, and they built work tables like a lunchroom. And I went down there once at lunch, and it was literally like a high school lunchroom, and everyone was sitting by their trade and all that. And there was actually, this brings me back to my 1980s high school days. It was actually a fight one day between 2 guys eating lunch because one guy made a comment about the other guy's quality of work, and he didn't like that very much. And I went, wow, I really thought this was high school, but it is. I mean, it takes on a culture. It takes on a little bit of a culture. Now, I'm only telling you that because the thing to look for is, how is that being managed? I'll give you a great example. If you said to every sub on a 450 worker a day project, everyone's starting at 8 a.m., no, they're not. Because if everyone showed up at 7:50 a.m., they're waiting for an hour for the hoist. So you have to stagger. How do people show up? You have to stagger when are deliveries allowed, which is not your peak rush hour for people. You need to stagger how people do lunch and how people do breaks. If you don't do these things with your workforce, it goes back to that means and methods. So that workforce is something that your big developers, your big contractors, they fully understand. And I can tell you this, your biggest GCs all do the same things right. Every one of their projects without fail. They're safe, they're clean, and they're organized. Every one of them, because they know that's how you advance a project. This is a good example. I actually took this photo. This is a project I'm on that it's interesting because that right there is the, I don't know what this was, maybe the 16th floor or something. That floor right there has about 12, 14 workers on it. That's about it. But I can tell you something, when that concrete is poured, you're going to see 4 times that, because now you could advance doing framing, mechanical, etc. So it's little things like that that we know from experience to keep an eye on when you can staff a project. But it's a really good one for you to keep an eye on. What is your workforce? What should it be? And how is it trending? Okay, what else? Out of sequence work. It's not illegal. It's not against code, but the hairs on your neck stand up. Out of sequence work. Look for this. Wonder why this is. If you see tubs sitting around as opposed to installed, ask why. A tub's a delicate fixture. We like to bring it in early because it's easier to set and then build around it, but we want to see it set. We don't want to see it sitting. If it's sitting, the right hand and the left hand weren't talking, and we didn't have a home for the tub when it was delivered and mobilized and brought to site. Why is that? Out of sequence work. Why is that? Maybe it's poor communication. Maybe sub's not being paid. Maybe the person who's running this job is in over their head. I don't know why, but I do know out of sequence work is a question now. It's a question we're going to start to ask. And if you do one thing out of sequence, that's okay. If you do a few, now I notice a trend. Now we're going to have a discussion. Did you get your cabinets installed before or after your floor? Or did you install your floor and then set your cabinets on it? When you have your hoist, did you properly schedule your work so that you could complete your elevator work, get your elevator signed off for your hoist, and therefore remove your hoist? Out of sequence work, scheduling that properly. I'm going to go over this a little more in a moment, but that's one we look for, because here's a reveal or a cheat code, a little sneak peek. The elevator work and the hoist work is a critical path, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes. Out of sequence work, which also could be something that they're in sequence, they're doing ahead of time. For example, a lot of flooring, back in the day, not that long ago, when you did number 2 oak, you bring the wood to the site and you had to let it sit for 2 weeks before you installed. And the reason is you wanted to get acclimated to the site conditions. Then you'd install, you'd do sand and 2 or 3 coats of poly. Most of the flooring we see now is pre-finished or a luxury vinyl tile. But if products need to be on site and acclimate, again, goes back to the means and methods, and it's not out of sequence as much as we need to bring it in before we need to install it, because it needs to get acclimated. So that's the planning mechanism. That's the, how have you sequenced the work so you're thinking ahead 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's one of the things we like to ask contractors all the time. You'll say, give me a 4-week look ahead. And we're not looking to set contractors up, but every contractor, when you say, give me a 4-week look ahead, 1 month's easy to predict. They'll say, oh, okay, in 1 month, let's see. Here's where I'll be. In 1 month, I'm going to be done with the 8th floor framing. I'll be up to the 6th floor and they'll give you all these things they're going to have done. And then in 1 month, you can see, how do we do? The really good contractors, when you do the 1 month look ahead, they're even telling you things for delivery that they need to get acclimated or on site. They have that already thought out in their head. Another cheat code on this, as far as kind of sequencing, is any super who doesn't know a 1 week weather forecast, I worry about. I'm a little concerned, because every super knows weather impacts your project. Number one, it impacts your project if you're outside, particularly in winter or summer, where you have temperature, wind, and moisture, rain, snow to worry about. Number two, it could impact how you're getting deliveries and workers to the site. So if you say to a super, hey, what's the weather going to be like this week? And they don't say, actually, it's going to be cloudy the next couple of days, rain later in the week, temperatures are going to be out the 50s. That's what we want to hear, because they're thinking about how they're planning and sequencing their work. Okay, what else do we look at? Now, this is an obvious one, but let's all look at it. Poor quality. Now, obviously, this one, I could do a whole day on this. Poor quality. Okay. Why is that? There's a lot of reasons. Did the sub not know? Do they not care? Are they not managed? Do they not have the details? You fill in the blank. I think one of the worst projects we ever had was a project that I won't even get any details. Not that anyone would guess it, but I won't get any details. But I will tell you, I remember our inspector showing up one day, and there was the super was out showing people how to do pointing, how to do grout work and brick work, and then they were installing the brick. That's not a good sign for quality. So we see insulation with a screw in it to hold it up. There's a lot wrong with this. Not to mention, your insulation needs to be the full width that it's installed at, and it needs to have those flanges overlapped and installed to the stud. So poor quality, we are on the lookout for this all the time. How it's installed, the workmanship of it. Again, this could be its own webinar. This could be its own 2-hour, 10-hour. If it looks wrong, it probably is. And I know that's a very non-technical way of explaining it, but if you go, it just doesn't look very good, it's probably poor installation. And by the way, I would argue the opposite is true as well. When I walk on site and I walk through the front door and I look over to the left and I see the fire sprinkler sub is there, and they've got all their pipes lined up by diameter, all their 90 degrees lined up by diameter, all their flanges lined up by size, I think this is going to be a really, really good site. This is going to be a good installation. when you go into an electrical sub panel and you see everything's just beautiful 90 degrees and it's labeled and it's consistent and it's clean, that's a good electrician. That's a quality electrician that you want to see. So what I'm saying, the opposite applies. This is an example of, for example, a pretty new building, water heater in a water heater closet. It's a gas water heater. That's why we have a flue here. Personally, I would have made this electric because it's in the middle of the building with no windows, no ventilation, and they had a door with ventilation. Well, guess what? I got news for you. You're pulling a lot of draft out, and the rust is showing you where the moisture is. Rust always shows you where the moisture is. So this is a problem. This was not properly ventilated, this water heater in this mechanical closet. And this is a property condition report of a few-year-old building. You could also see by how the copper is already starting to show some green patina on the right side in particular. Why? That's where the moisture is. That's where it's telling you. It's showing you a fingerprint of where the issue is. Another perfect example. Doing earthwork, you're going to backfill all your dirt back up to the building. There should be no garbage or debris in that hole. And look at that. It's a disaster. Now, I'm not saying they're backfilling today, but when you backfill, you don't want anything that's biodegradable or organic that's going to decompose and lose its volume. Perfect example. When you see a cul-de-sac that's built and structural, let's say you're building especially this was back in the day when we didn't check this as well as an industry. Maybe someone lives or has seen this. You go and you see all these new houses that were built in the 90s, and they're beautiful houses. Maybe they're McMansions, and they're structurally fine. But you look at the walkway from the driveway to the house and the pavement, the walkway is kind of differentially settled. Why is that? That concrete walkway is not very heavy compared to the building. That's why it's settling. Because a lot of those buildings, they would degrub and take out all the trees to build the building, and they bury them. They grind them up and bury them. You can't do that. When you bury trees and roots and growth, it'll eventually decompose, therefore lose volume, therefore anything above with weight and load is going to settle. That's why we don't bury stuff like that. But that was a big problem. We do a better job as an industry watching that today. But the interesting thing is they thought, well, we'll just bury it under the sidewalks. Those aren't very heavy. Doesn't matter. You're going to lose volume. A similar kind of example sort of is when they built KOW City in the Bronx. They did such a good job of supporting the buildings because that's a very swampy area of the marshy area of the Bronx. They did a really good job of supporting the buildings because that's a big load. They didn't support the utilities. And over decades, a lot of the utilities started to settle. Even though they're lightweight compared to the building, it's still going to settle over time. So, where we put our attention as an industry, it changes. We change over time. But buried debris in backfilling is one of my pet peeves. It's just you have one shot to do it right. And once you do it wrong, it's wrong forever. And once it's covered, there's no way to know. So little things like that. Here's another one that's a pet peeve of mine and should never happen. So this is a flat roof. Well, it's not flat, essentially flat roof. They've got condensers up on the roof for cooling. That's obviously added on much later than the buildings were built 100 years ago. Nothing wrong with that. However, they have non-rated steel out on the roof bearing right on the coping stones. That's a no-no. Coping stones are not supposed to have load right on it. Now, you could have designed this and attached these right to the side of the parapet on the interior, but this is just this isn't even a permitted job. This is just a terrible way to support these. It's a mobile load. These move and shake, and it's just no one should have ever allowed this or approved this. This is a property condition report, but it's still indicative of a poor quality installation. This is another one. This is a building. I won't tell you where because I don't want you all guessing. They were getting water inside, and they thought, well, if 5 weep holes is good, 25 must be better. That's not how weep holes work. They just put holes in their building. A weep hole is what you see here, and a weep hole is a very good design feature if it's doing the following. It is bringing water from the layer or the air width between the brick and the backup of the building down a waterproofing member and outside the cavity. Whenever you hear someone say, oh, it's a cavity wall system, they're telling you it's brick, air, building. That's the cavity. Brick, air, building. Now, our pre-war buildings were not cavity wall systems, but your new energy code requires it if it's brick. So if you brick, air, building, every floor usually, you're going to have a waterproofing member, and it's going to bring the water out the weep hole. You can't just pop holes in your cavity and hope for the best. And they just kind of did it, I guess, wherever there was, I don't know, water coming out. Poor quality. There's another one that I know is very, very honest, very, very obvious, but poor housekeeping. I can't tell you how obvious this is. If I saw this site, I better go back in my car and get a second pen because I'm probably going to run out of notes to keep inside. This is going to be a disastrous inspection. Poor housekeeping. Says a lot. It says a lot. It says a lot about you as a super. It says a lot about how your subs are treated. It says a lot about the quality of your subs. It says a lot about maybe you're not paying them. Maybe you're not treating them well. Maybe you're frustrating them. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can't afford laborers. There's a lot of things that go into this happening. And by the way, like all catastrophes or getting to this point, it's not one thing. It's a number of things. It's a series of things. But when we see this, we're extremely worried. This is what we like. This is better housekeeping. It's clean. It's neat. Even your debris is clean and neat. So this is what we want to see. So poor housekeeping. It's probably the lowest tech thing to look for. And boy, I can't even tell you how true it is. When you see a well-kept site, you're going to probably see good installation. It's also not going to damage your installation because of a messy site or get you stop work orders or violations from your building department. We had a project a number of years ago, and this doesn't happen very often at all, that was taken over. The contractor was thrown off site, and it was a disastrous project from a housekeeping standpoint. And the new super came in, and there was a meeting with everyone, and he said, you need to give me a month. I don't want anyone to bother me for a month. I'm going to meet with every sub. I'm going to walk every square inch of that site. Give me 1 month. I don't want to answer to anyone for 1 month, but after that month, get ready. So we went back after about 5 weeks, gave the month, and I didn't even recognize the site. I mean, it was just completely cleaned, organized, lit up, well run, and the subs came back on and just started cooking. So that housekeeping concept, your great supers, they know. They know that's a cheat code. Unsafe conditions. This one drives me nuts. So this was on real picture. I'm not naming names. I don't kiss and tell, but I will say this is a real project. And before I even opened my mouth, the architect turned to the contractor and lit him up. And I said, okay, good. That's what should happen. This is the 6th floor of an elevator shaft. So congratulations. You not only don't have a rigid barrier up to 42 inches, but you have a tripping hazard into a 6th floor of an elevator shaft, which after you're 60 feet down is a poured concrete slab. And it's right where a stair lets out. So some poor guy is coming down the stairs holding debris or tools or materials and doesn't see this. Unsafe conditions. I can't tell you how it's generally something that is maintained well, but it's a constant thing we look for. This is another one, actual site I saw. I won't get into the whole history of this one, but I took the picture as the contractor was running up the stairs and as they pulled. Yes, if you're asking yourself, yes, moments before there was a guy up on that scaffolding. So there's a lot of things wrong with this, but unsafe conditions are usually a tell there's other things at play. Your biggest unsafe conditions are going to be roofing, facade, demolition, which makes sense. Roofing and facade because of your height. Roofing work is not dangerous. It's just dangerous because you're up 20 or 50 or 200 or 300 feet. Same with facade work. Brickwork is not inherently dangerous if you're standing on the sidewalk. It's the fact that you're up off the ground many, many feet. Demolition. Demolition is the most dangerous trade there is. particularly if you're doing a replacement of new, like the top of the photo, with old, like the bottom of the photo. Now, by the way, this is a controlled access zone, CAZ. If you're thinking to yourself, Ken, you shouldn't even be able to get close to this. You're right. There was actually a hard barrier. I couldn't go anywhere near this, which is how it should be, because I'm not a controlled demolition worker on this that's actually performing the removal. So the answer is no, I was not able to get closer. And the reason is because it's a controlled access zone. But they're very dangerous parts of the job. Demolition is a very, very dicey part of the job. And it's why they work alone before other workers come back on site. This is one that I kept this in because I think it's the reminder for all of us. Every year, New York City has something in the spring called Live Safe, Build Safe. It's a very, very good get together. And one of the things they do, which is very morbid, but it's needed, is they show construction deaths on New York City sites, in construction sites for the last year. And the thing that would surprise you if you've never attended or seen it is most of them are 6-story and below buildings. They're not 40-story towers. They're not 60-story buildings. They're not your big, big, big skyscrapers. And the reason is it's the real quick theory, in my opinion. That's what I call it. And it worries me as much as anything for construction worker safety. Real quick. Let me just shimmy around this chimney real quick. Oh, real quick, let me hop over this shaft to grab my tool belt. Real quick, let me move this barrier because I'm loading something down to the cellar. And that real quick moment, that's all it takes. So this was a very honest mistake. They removed the barrier. They were loading something down to the cellar. I show up the next day. It's not there. I said to the super, what's going on? And he saw immediately. He said, don't move. I took a picture and he corrected it. But this, I think, illustrates just how tough it is for a super. It's an everyday, ongoing, every moment thing. And it's unfortunate that it's a very, very real stress in their life, but it's that real quick. That's the one that worries me more than anything. It's not probably your very experienced licensed sub that's used to doing facade work. They're going to probably follow all the rules really, really well. It's that real quick moment. And that's the one that supers know they have to pay as much attention as anything. Okay, let's now talk about we've talked a lot about what we're seeing. Now let's talk about kind of how to step back a little and think about what's happening. We're going to do that by talking about critical path. And I'll explain to you very simply what a critical path is. And for us and for you all, it should be everything you think about when you think about the schedule, or at least most of what you think about. So what does critical path mean? So a critical path is the longest period of time required to complete the project in the simplest manner from here to completion. So what that means is the following. When you have a project, you have one or more critical paths going on, and that's where we want to spend our time talking. So I'll give you an easy start. When you're building your superstructure, when you are pouring your foundation, now you're doing the first floor, now you're doing the second floor, your critical path is your structure. Build your building, because everything comes after that. Everything is hinging on that structure being completed. But what happens after the structure is completed is now you have all of these schedule paths happening at the same time. So on the fourth floor, your mason's working, doing CMU work at your trash room. And at your fourth floor, also your framer's working. And at your fifth floor, you're doing plumberizer work. And at your sixth floor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have all these different paths happening at the same time, all these different trades. And that's good. That goes back to what we talked about earlier to complete the project. The critical path will usually be one of a few things. And just to illustrate that, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have apartment, condo, house, doesn't matter. You have a bathroom and you have a kitchen. And you're going to have your bathroom redone, and it's going to take a month, and your kitchen redone and it's going to take 2 months. And you started them both on June 1st. And you hire Bathrooms R Us to do your bathrooms and ABC Kitchens to do your kitchen. And they both start June 1st. Your kitchen is your critical path because your kitchen is going to take 2 months, no more, no less, to completion. And you want to move back in 61 days. Your bathroom is only going to take a month. So in this illustration, your bathroom has a 4-week float or cushion to not become a critical path. Your kitchen is your critical path. So when your bathroom sub says, hey, bad news, that special toilet you wanted from Japan with the bidet and the cleaning function and the music is going to take an extra week to get. I'm not going to be done in 4 weeks. I'm going to be done in 5 weeks. 5 weeks. You're not that concerned because they had a 4-week float, which is now a 3-week float. They're not delaying you. You're still moving in 61 days. But when your kitchen sub says, hey, by the way, bad news, my tile person's on vacation. I'm not going to be done in 8 weeks. I'm going to be done in 9 weeks. You're upset because your critical path, your kitchen, is now delaying your project 1 week. So that's how you should think of critical path. It's the thing that's taking the longest and you can't shorten, which things that are taking less time are not as much of your concern. So elevator is a critical path. And the reason is, if you have a building over 75 feet in New York City, and I apologize outside the city, but let's use it as a teaching illustration. Above 75 feet in New York City, you must have a construction hoist. You're looking at a construction hoist. And a construction hoist is a construction elevator. And the reason is, above 75 feet for your building, you need that for worker safety, egress, emergency, materials, fire department, building department, everything. So you have to have it. You don't have a choice. When can you remove it? You can remove it when your elevator inside the building is done and signed off. When does that happen? Well, in order for an elevator sub to start, they need a shaft with a temporary roof and proper electric power in there. Well, when is that going to happen? Well, I got to finish my superstructure to finish the shaft. So you see how these things all follow each other. There's predecessors or prerequisites. So your elevator is going to be a critical path, which is why, and if you've never noticed this before, now you will, when you walk by a site on the street or you go to one of your sites, you could see apartments that are doing painting except for the hoist run. And the hoist run is delayed. Why is the hoist run delayed? Because the elevator is delayed. So that elevator completion is a critical path. Can you get in New York City a certificate of occupancy excluding the hoist run apartments? Yes, you can. It probably tells you someone screwed up somewhere with scheduling, but you are allowed to do that. But your elevator is a critical path. Once the building's built, we start asking, when is your elevator work starting? Because that's a critical path. You need your shaft to put your equipment and your power. What's another critical path? Utilities. Utilities. And the reason utilities are a critical path is, unfortunately, it's not up to the contractor or developer. We need help. We need Con Ed. We need gas service. We need approvals. We need the street dug up by someone that we don't control. I say we as in the development team. So utilities. So you see here on the left, that's a sanitary main. You see on the right, that's a water main. There's fire sprinkler, there's electric, there's gas. So your utilities, I would say to you, when you get to literally 50%, certainly by 60, 70%, start asking, just like we do, hey, where are you with utilities? And a good super is going to say to you, okay, here's where we are. And they're going to give you the rundown. And by the way, do you get your utilities in a certain order? Sort of. And the reason is, you need to have water in your building in order to have electric or gas, because how would you fight a fire if you have electric or gas and you have a fire? Well, you can't have water until you have sewer, because how can you put water in a building with nowhere to go? So the utilities sort of follow each other, but the ones that usually are the biggest issue is gas and electric. So I would say to you, when you hit 50% on your big projects, start asking, hey, where are we with utilities? Now, it should be happening a lot before that, but that's kind of when you should start to ask and push. And if you have a project that has a Con Ed electrical vault, start asking at 10%. And the reason is a Con Ed electrical vault, or an electrical vault in where Con Ed serves, like New York City, is a big shutoff box under the street. It needs 16 approval signatures to get installed and takes 18 months. You didn't mishear that. 18 months, 16 signatures. Why does it take 16 signatures? Well, it's under the street, which means you need the Department of Transportation and the Department of Building and the Fire Department and the DEP and the Transit Authority and the Parks Department. There's someone at the parade department in New York City that has to approve of it. So those sorts of utility questions, I would just say, to be safe, you could never ask them too early. And then number 10, milestones. Now I'm going to tell you kind of the milestones that we follow, most industry kind of standards follow, and milestones are great. They're great for a few reasons. Number one, it's a very real world way that we all can get our head around how are we doing. It's also usually a very good instance of going from one risk layout to another within the site. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to show you some pictures. So number one is groundbreaking. Okay, obviously groundbreaking is big. When do we start? Okay, the shovel hit the ground, we're off and running. Number two is our foundation complete. Number three is superstructure complete. Number four is envelope waterproofed. Top of the building, temp roof. Side of the building, first ply, windows, etc. Because when you have envelope waterproofing done, you could work inside and you're not worried about any water coming in, which means you could do finish work. It means if it's winter, you could have salamanders for temporary heat, etc. Rough framing, rough MEP work, wall, ceilings, floors closed up, elevator complete, substantial complete, and punch list. So first thing we want to see is groundbreaking. When are you starting? Obviously, this is a big milestone because the project's off and running. It also means we've got permits. The subs are there for that. The GC's there. They've dropped a trailer. We've got temporary electric. Groundbreaking's big because it means, okay, they're now giving it the attention. The super's there. We've got permits in place. We're off and running. Groundbreaking. Number two, foundation done. And this is a small building. This is a single family, but this is a really, really good picture because it literally shows you the difference between working in the earth and working in the air. Once this foundation is complete, we're now working in the air, and we love that because we don't have surprises in the air. I mean, we could have surprises, physics as far as structural and that's concerned, but we're not going to uncover any issues hidden in the air as much as we are in the earth. So foundation complete. By the way, the waterproofing is not complete, but that doesn't matter because the hard part's done. The foundation is structurally built. Superstructure complete. So when we go all the way up, the good news is on a bigger building, we're not waiting till we get to the top. We're coming right up from below with framing and all the mechanical trades, but superstructure complete, great milestone. Temporary waterproof. It's not permanent, but it's going to keep water out and keep conditioned air in if we want to heat or cool. Well, we're not going to cool, but heat, so we can work inside. We're now exempt from the elements, and that's the key. And by the way, New York City, typically December 5th is the first day we start worrying about freeze thaw and winter issues. We had a really, really rough winter this winter. Keep an eye on your schedules next year. I think you're going to see some winter days worked in because we got lazy the last few years with mild winters. But this winter has reminded us, you better be ready for three things: wind, snow, and cold. Rough framing, rough mechanical, windows, walls, floors, and ceilings closed up. Okay, now we're really feeling good. Now our risk has gone way down. Now it's a finished product. It's more precise, but it's a really, really good milestone. And then you get to that elevator completion, substantial completion, and punch list completion. So I hope this was helpful to kind of give a little bit of an idea. You're out on site. What are you looking for? What are you asking? We're just about at time, but I do have a minute or two to stay after. If anyone has any questions they want to put in the chat, but I want to just thank everyone for attending. I hope this was helpful. Here's my information there at the top right. If anyone has any questions, needs anything, We're here to serve. If we can help at all, please let us know. But thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it. Have a good weekend and holiday, and everyone. And again, thank you for watching.